Okay, just before we get back to our story in Kenya, it's a good time now to talk about the Foreign Minister, Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa, who's now revealing to Chatham House in London that Ghana will soon roll out a new security arrangement described as a coalition of the willing that will be aimed at fighting terrorism. The initiative, he says, will replace the receding Accra initiative, which was launched under the previous NPP administration to address the rising insecurity and the threats within the Sahelian region. According to the minister, the new strategy will involve possibly the deployment of about 1,500 soldiers to help tackle the growing threats and cross-border insurgency. Speaking alongside Nigeria's foreign minister, Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa is indicating that both countries are now strengthening cooperation to ensure that West Africa sub-region does not become a breeding ground for extremism. He is also warning that with tension in the Middle East continuing to escalate, African countries must send a clear signal that the continent will not become a safe haven for violent groups.
The entire planet, and it's something that requires the collaboration and participation of all countries. Our region is one of the fastest growing regions in the world in terms of population growth, and is also a space that has witnessed the relocation of a lot of extremist groups where they appear to be incubating and creating lots of problems. So the major challenge we have, first and foremost, is the proliferation of weapons, the contestations of other powers projecting in the region, as well as both exogenous and endogenous factors that have brought about all of this. I mean, I can go into more detail. I don't know how long you want me to talk.
No, that's absolutely fine for now. Thank you very much. And also to you then, Minister Ablakwa, how do you perceive it from the Ghanaian point of view? Of course, we can talk about the Accra initiative a bit later on, but your particular point of interest will be your northern border, I'm assuming.
Yes. Yeah, Martin, good evening to you. Good evening to my distinguished colleague, Minister Tuga, and to the esteemed panel here at Chatham House. Such an honor to be here. And let me begin by paying tribute to 8 Ghanaians who were killed by extremists only a few weeks ago. Sadly, on Valentine's Day, they didn't enjoy the love of St. Valentine on that day. They met the cruelty and inhumanity of these terrorists who are running amok in our region. The experts say that we have a situation where every day there are at least 8 attacks and 44 lives are claimed by these attacks.
Is this limited to this northern region?
Just within the Sahel. Yes, just within the Sahel. And what the recent incident teaches us is that you really don't need to have the terrorists attack your country. They don't have to enter your jurisdiction for you to be affected. So it's a lesson to all of us that we really have to stem the tide, and we have to neutralize these extremists. We have a situation now where, because of the erosion in democracy, the return of coup d'etats, failed states, and ungoverned spaces within the region, there's so many territories that the dividends of democracy and the presence of the state are not being felt. And that's where these extremists, who, by the way, came down from the north, the post-Libya Gaddafi intervention down here. So it's become a haven, and that is the tragedy we face now. It's become the epicenter of global terror.
Right, so we have a comprehensive overview then of the situation in the region. What are the kinds of security architecture that exist at the moment that will be relevant, that can be maybe updated, revised, boosted, that could be used to combat this? Does that exist, or does it require a new kind of security architecture?
They exist. These are structures that allow for the right of hot pursuit like the Multinational Joint Task Force. We're also in discussions with Ghana and others to convert the Accra Initiative into a multinational joint task force type structure, because historically it's worked. We have very complex cross-border areas where lots of countries meet. If you take the case of Nigeria and the Lake Chad region, we share borders with 3 other countries, and these are countries that belong not just to ECOWAS, but also ECAS, and so it's quite complex. You have the difference between Anglophone and Francophone, so even the laws, you're looking at monist and dualist systems and so on, so it's quite complex. To the west of Nigeria, same thing. We share borders with the Republic of Benin and Niger, and Mali is only about 300 kilometers away. So when you have the Multinational Joint Task Force, and then you have other regional bodies that allow for mechanisms, frameworks, that first and foremost allow you to frame the problem correctly, because that's very important. Frame it as a regional problem, not an internal problem in your country. And then that way you're able to prefer the right solutions.
Okay, so we've mentioned the Accra Initiative. Is it worth actually explaining what it is at the moment and how you hope to update it? Because there are some analysts who suggest that it's actually run out of steam, it's run out of momentum, and you actually need something new to deal with this problem.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair analysis, and that's why in January this year we convened a consultative forum with all our neighbors. It was a Western Africa agenda to create a new framework, because the Accra Initiative did not only run out of steam, but it became bedeviled with extreme suspicion because of the role of France and other Western partners in the original conceptualization of the Accra Initiative. And with the AES countries pivoting towards Russia, and I mean, it's also become some ideological battle for them, that they want to cut ties with France, and they do not want to have any cooperation with France. So it's really further muddied waters. And so we are now creating a new framework. We're calling it a coalition of the willing. And we have the support of the African Union. We have secured the blessing of the African Union to deploy 1,600 men for hot pursuit, troops on the ground. And we just convened a meeting of all special envoys to the Sahel across the globe. And the strategy now is to come together and with this coalition of the willing, pursue and neutralize these terrorists. I must say that so far, the AES countries are beginning to realize that they can't go alone. And perhaps some of the pledges made to them by their newfound friends, they have discovered that they probably are busy elsewhere, and they are not that of a priority to them. So they are
well, a good time now to bring in Richard Kumado, who is a security consultant. Thank you so much, sir, for your time. And you've been monitoring the development across the border, where, of course, we lost 8 citizens to the activities of violent extremists. Now, the minister is revealing government's plan, which will now include the likes of Nigeria. The coalition of the willing, he is calling it. Good move?
Definitely, yes. It has always been an issue of collaboration and coordination. And once they can have a collaborated effort in dealing with a situation which individual countries may not have the strength to deal with effectively, I think that is the right thing to do, and that is the right way to go. For us as a nation, what we have done over the years is to establish specialized forces within our law enforcement agencies to deal with this issue of elements of surprise from terror groups. and they have worked very hard across our borders, establishing the front lines when it comes to intelligence collection and activities of terrorism, to be able to provide a mitigating factor on a speedy manner that deals with the threat on a monthly manner and on the manner that ensures that national sovereignty is guaranteed. So I'm happy to hear that other nations are willing to come aboard, and that's the way to go.
But the kinetic approach has always been criticized. The fact that, well, it doesn't necessarily solve all of the challenges.
Definitely, yes, because when we go back into history, then we can even stretch the argument to find out who are these terrorists, where do they come from, how did they become a group, and what is the objective and what is the aim. Until we are able to deal with those core factors and the push and pull factors that ensures that these terror groups do not go away, we might be fighting them, but the strategy might be wrong. And that is why I believe in we coming together, establishing a framework, define the issue properly, and making sure that what affects individual nations might be different, but collectively, we can deal with the root causes of the issue and deal with it more effectively. And the issue of terrorism is not just what affects the Sahel regions, but it affects almost every country within the West Africa region. And almost all the countries within the West Africa region has been hit, except Ghana. And for that matter, we become the benchmark for people to learn from us what we have done properly over the years. And that becomes the blueprint going into this coalition of the willing, coming together with a large group of people, provide the resources and the leadership to coordinate efforts in working out to deal with this issue of terrorism.
I want us to deal with the aspect of Nigeria, because the Nigerian minister there, well, it's quite an extended video where he was challenging the narrative and how we're classifying what's going on within the West Africa sub-region. Some have described this as a religious war, and most of West Africa's leadership, in terms of political leaders, are still calling it's just plain terror without any coloration, whether religion or creed. How much of a challenge would it be if we're not diagnosing this terror threat as it should be? Because some are calling it a religious war, actually.
Brother, if you go to the Sahel region, where some of us have visited very often, and we know the dynamics there, issues of religion do not come in at all. For the Sahel region, it has been about regional cooperation and nationhood and stability and national identity. These are the issues that contains in the tribe for whether you want to become a terrorist or you want to counter against the terrorist regime. When you come to Ghana, where Christians and Muslims and traditionalists have lived together for many years, issues about religion do not play a key role in our nation. But then, of course, when you go to Nigeria, it's a major issue for them. And to the extent that they do not have a strong leadership to deal with this issue over the years, it has fostered into an umbrella of issues that they always keep on moving the goalposts. Whether it's a religious issue or it's an economic issue driving it, what we need to know is that we have an issue at hand, let's define it, and let's find the mitigating factors before it swallows all of us as a nation of independent nations across West Africa.
1,500 men, would you say that is enough, perhaps?
You might even need more, because even if you take our specialized forces within our law enforcement agencies, and you are looking at the groupings that belong to the counter-terrorism alone, for Ghana alone, raising that number wouldn't be a problem. But some other countries will struggle within West Africa, because some countries do not have the capacity in terms of army, and some countries do not have the resilient and the resilience forces we have within the Ghana Police Service. So that is going to be a problem. But for countries like Ghana and some other countries within West Africa, that number wouldn't be a problem. What will become a challenge will be issue of resources. And where would the resources be coming from? Because people are skeptical, people are aware that people may take advantage, the Western nations may take advantage of the whole strife and create another problem for Africa countries. And that is why sometimes when they are coming together, elements of suspicion become the tone they don't want to speak, but that becomes the elephant in the room. I believe that if Africans put their resources together and they begin to work together, they will be able to deal with this issue of terror that is killing everybody within the West Africa zone.
Richard Kumado, thank you for your time. And of course, we continue to watch the space for you and bring you some more updates. We'll return to, what's happening in London and on the sidelines of the Commonwealth Foreign Ministers meeting shortly. But let us get an update for you from Nairobi, Kenya, where, of course, Kennedy is back with us. Kennedy, apologies because of the weather, we didn't get a smooth connection through to you. Let's go back to what's happening in Nairobi as we speak and other parts of Kenya, the flooding, the flash floods that are, of course, affecting many there in your country. You're bringing us up to speed with what's happening there, Kennedy. Okay, we seem to be obviously having a challenge there, and it's quite understandable, isn't it? Because of the weather and the disruptions in networks there in Kenya. We'll bring you updates on that flooding, but if you have a relative there, you might want to reach out just for the purposes of safety. Of course, the Foreign Minister, I was just speaking, after wrapping up the 26th Commonwealth Foreign Ministers meeting in London, where, of course, the Nigerian Foreign Affairs Minister, together with others across the Commonwealth, were to promote issues of global trade and other issues of mutual interest to both countries. Now, the governments are now arguing there that removing trade barriers could unlock greater economic opportunities for developing countries within the Commonwealth. We can now watch excerpts of the deliberations there.
56 nations, linked not by geography but by values, not as the problem of the past, but as a solution of the future. And that requires reimagining and reinventing the different dimensions of partnership for transformation and growth. Through the Commonwealth, we have proved that the challenging dynamics of the past can be transformed into the partnerships of today. Partnerships not of dependency, but of equality and shared prosperity. Partnerships where everyone contributes and everyone benefits. Together in the Commonwealth, we have the chance to write a new chapter, one where our shared history becomes the foundation of shared prosperity. If we choose to think beyond the past and today, if we see trade and investments and the large markets the Commonwealth offers through the lens of endless possibility, instead of old fears of risk, the sky indeed will be the limit for us. And for us, we must believe that the time for modest ambition is over. And we must prove through action, through partnership, through vision, that when we stand together and when we work together, we can defend our values, advance our interests, and change the world. When Commonwealth countries engage with coherence across global platforms, including around initiatives such as Bridgetown, our collective voice carries serious power. Together, we can rise above the chaos we see around us and make our Commonwealth a force for stability, fairness, and practical cooperation in a fractured world. A platform that connects the wider world in pursuit of opportunity and progress.
Ghana commends the Commonwealth for the reforms that have been well outlined, and we hope to share our thoughts, particularly in offering the Commonwealth as a different multilateral organization that does not believe in tariff wars, but will remove tariffs and trade barriers and ensure that we are able to enhance our fortunes as we pursue economic diplomacy, particularly as Ghana hosts the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat. We thank you very much and look forward to this retreat. We are confident it will be meaningful and impactful.
Well, that meeting is wrapping up, where we are also entering the phase of celebrating the Commonwealth, because here in Ghana, a ceremony was held earlier today to mark the 74th Commonwealth Day. The event held under the theme Unlocking Opportunity Together for a Crossroads Commonwealth. Well, that event actually brought together government officials and diplomats to reflect on the future of the 56-member bloc. Interior Minister Muntaka Mubarak used the occasion to call on Commonwealth nations to move beyond rhetoric and to pursue a future built on economic development, climate resilience, and also honest reflections on our shared history. Here are excerpts.
Ghana is thrilled to join the proud fraternal community of Commonwealth nations in celebrating this day. Since joining the Commonwealth shortly after Ghana's independence, we have been a consistent voice around multilateralism, a major advocate for equitable development, and a significant contributor to international peace and security within this continent and beyond. We believe that collaboration, not isolation, is the surest path to global peace and the progress of all humankind. With our 56 nations and about 2.7 billion people, the Commonwealth action for a fairer, inclusive, and sustainable world demonstrates the reach and impact of our influence and how far we have come from being more than the historical association that brought us together. Ladies and gentlemen, when we act in support of the needs of our respective nations, we show the rest of the world that our shared commitment to the values of democracy, good governance, and peace, cooperation, and shared prosperity is not lip service, but an investment in global peace, security, and stability, and a down payment for solidarity and multilateralism. On this auspicious occasion, Ghana reaffirms its commitment to the Commonwealth and to a future anchored in peace, prosperity, and progress.
We have been at the forefront of what the Commonwealth is today. We were also at the forefront of the establishment of the Commonwealth Secretariat in 1965, and we have been champions of democracy, and I think you can see the vast number of diplomatic corps members here shows the stability of Ghana and the importance of Ghana within the Commonwealth. In terms of economic and strategic partnerships, Ghana is a major hub, and the organization I represent, the Enterprise and Investment Council, which is the business arm of the Commonwealth, is doing a lot of great work here. And that's why today, if you look to my left, you see lots of important business leaders here who are employing thousands or tens of thousands of Ghanaians and contributing to what makes up $19 trillion GDP within the country. We affirm the truth that cooperation among nations, freely chosen, values-based, and equal, remains the surest foundation for peace and prosperity. The Commonwealth is not held together by force or geography. It is sustained by conviction. 56 countries, 1/3 of humanity, united by a shared commitment to democracy, human rights, the rule of law, and opportunity for all. The world is changing, economically, technologically, environmentally, and geopolitically.
Certainly, there's no doubt that Commonwealth is at a crossroads. Let's bring in now Dr. John Appiah, who's joining us via Zoom. Fortunately, you were there, of course, leading that conversation. Prior to that, we know that Commonwealth, foreign affairs ministers have also been meeting in London. So quite a great coincidence, just in the lead up to this conversation that we ought to have about the challenges confronting many Commonwealth countries today. To be about trade, because there's generally a breakdown in the rule-based order. How do we navigate this, starting off?
Hello, Blessed. Thank you for having me on your show. And thank you very much for your viewers for the constant support for the Commonwealth. For me, it's very simple. It all starts from the name Commonwealth. The wealth that we have in common. And listening to the discussions around trade, around terrorism, it points to what I believe the Commonwealth's opportunity is. You know, at a time where there's so much conflict, there's so much uncertainty, I think the Commonwealth is a safe pair of hands that allows economies to still prosper, that allows economies to be stable amidst everything that is going on. And so I'm very excited to be here to probably add a bit to what our foreign minister was talking about. And actually, the timing of this is very appropriate. It's not by accident. The Commonwealth Secretary General believes in the power of trade and investment and in the private sector to actually drive stability across the regions. Yeah. Because, blessed, a lot of people will say terrorism is due to ideological differences or religious differences. But I think just as we saw in the West with class wars and class divides, it's basically about economics, you know, and that's where I think we have an opportunity to galvanize the private sector, create jobs, create economic prosperity. And I think it solves a lot of the problems that we're talking about.
Okay, let's get into it then. The feasibility or otherwise of pushing for you know, a free trade area within the Commonwealth. That's at least the position of the government of Ghana, asking that Commonwealth members consider that. There's already pre-existing, you know, frameworks here in Africa, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, for instance, but it's suffering its own challenges because of the concept of the free trade area. How feasible would that be in the Commonwealth?
Well, blessed, I think this is long overdue. The Commonwealth already shares a lot of legal systems, a lot of shared languages, and so it's much easier to implement than other trade blocs, I believe. And you look at the GDP within the Commonwealth of close to 19 trillion US dollars. The opportunity is there, you know, and it's something I've been championing for over a decade, and I'm glad it's come up now in terms of being able to, because you look at the Commonwealth as it stands. Through African countries, you can access AfTA. Through Asian countries, from Bangladesh to Pakistan to Singapore, you can access Asia. Through United Kingdom, through Malta, through Cyprus, you can access Europe. Through the Caribbean countries, Jamaica, Antigua, Barbuda, St. Kitts and Nevis, you can access the Caribbean. You know, it's a bit like a Venn diagram where it provides us the opportunity to access so many different markets, so many different territories, you know, because you look at trade between countries to export maybe tomatoes from Sierra Leone or mangoes from Sierra Leone to Ghana. It's much more expensive than me getting it from a country in Asia or a country in the West. You know, it does not make sense, you know. So building on what we already have, shared language, shared history, shared legal systems, it makes it very easy to implement the removal of trade barriers across the Commonwealth. And I think if any organization is placed to handle this, it's probably the Commonwealth, because of the history that we share and the wealth that we have in common.
Yeah, how much of an incentive would it be for African countries, or perhaps those in the global north who are members of the Commonwealth, to be a part of this rule-based order when developments across the world do not point to that direction?
Well, you know, if one person wins, I believe all people win. You know, you look at the United Kingdom's welfare system, for instance, created by Beveridge. It wasn't really because the poor were loved, but because if you don't provide for the poor, what happens is they'll spill off into more affluent areas. You know, just because Western communities are more affluent doesn't mean they'll not be interested in the trade between Africa and the Caribbean and the Pacific and Asia. You know, especially those economies have plateaued in many ways. And they are actually looking at the opportunity to trade more freely with Africa and more freely with Asia. So I think it's a plus for everyone, and everyone wins when we all win.
The point about capacity on the part of African countries, Ghana has its own, you know, unique economic challenges. Will we competitively trade if that should happen, that we have a free trade area within the Commonwealth?
Well, It starts from somewhere. I know we all have our challenges. A lot of African countries have those challenges, but I think looking at what President Mahama has outlined in terms of the 24-hour economy and other initiatives that have been outlined, I think we're at the point where Ghana, countries like Ghana, will be ready to very much benefit from Commonwealth free trade.
And then we can now look at the issues of investment, which you've been working on widely with your Commonwealth Enterprise and Investment Council. Here in Ghana and beyond, how's the investment climate looking like? And is there appetite generally to invest within the Commonwealth?
Well, Blessed, our organization, the Commonwealth Enterprise and Investment Council, is the business arm, so to speak, of the Secretariat. And it was created by the 56 heads of government who recognized that social political power was one thing that we had within the Commonwealth, but we were not trading and investing with each other or across board. And so the main...
we seem to be losing you there. John, if you could just take that point for us again. Well, of course, you were trying to explain to us the technicalities in what you've been focusing on over the period. John Appiah is the head of mission, Commonwealth Enterprise and Investment Council. We'll just reconnect with him. John, we lost you there briefly, but you're just trying to put a spotlight on your council and how you're driving investment appetite across the Commonwealth.
So our council is mainly focused on the private sector. And we are seeing how with the private sector, we can promote job opportunities and promote trade and investment. So we work a lot with different countries from within the Commonwealth, from Singapore, from UK, from Canada, from Nigeria. We pair companies together. We have huge companies like the Dangote Group, like Zenith Group within Africa. We have HSBC, we have the City of London, we have the Foreign and Commonwealth and Development Office, all are strategic partners. We have Government of Lagos as a strategic partner. It's all about being able to pair businesses with one another, being able to pair countries with one another, to see where areas of strength can be strengthened and to see how we can work in harmony with one another. So our main objective is to promote trade, to promote investment, to promote FDIs into different economies, and to promote jobs and strengthen the private sector. And so we're doing very well with that. At the Commonwealth Day celebration in Accra today, we had many captains of industry, many of who sit as strategic partners on the Commonwealth Council, and the list is growing. We have a great hub in Nigeria, we have in Kenya, we have in the United Kingdom. So it's growing, and we're seeing a lot of performance from these companies across the board.
And finally, innovation ought to move alongside with policy. If there's any policy consideration that we should be moving towards within the Commonwealth, what should that be?
Well, I think it's what you were discussing earlier in terms of removal of trade barriers. I think that is the biggest weakness to promoting economic prosperity. It makes the flow of business much easier, and I think it's something that is well overdue. And I think it will be much easier to implement because of the history within the Commonwealth than the implementation process that other blocks have been having. So looking very much forward to that.
And the Interior Minister there stoking the conversation around equity. We were talking about big size economy, the trillions within which GDP is rising within the Commonwealth. Is that equitably distributed across the Commonwealth? Is there equal opportunity for all?
It is not equally distributed within the Commonwealth in terms of from an economic point of view. What is distributed equally within the Commonwealth is the sharing of power, where small states like Tonga have the same voting rights as large states like Canada or Australia or Nigeria. But I think it's work in progress, and I think we see that different territories or different countries are implementing different strategies to be able to get a piece of the cake. So it's work in progress. Ghana, I think, is punching well above its weight. but it's punching in the right direction. And I think a lot of other African countries are following suit.
Grateful for your time. And of course, we wish you the very best as we celebrate the Commonwealth Day. Dr. John Appiah, Head of Mission, Commonwealth Enterprise and Investment Council, joining us there. Well, so that's all time will last here on Connect Africa with me, Blessed Sugan. I'll see you again. Until then, log on to myjoyonline.com. More stories there for you to catch up on. We'll see you again. Bye.